Hi, Islander families. My name is Mary Jo Budges. I'm one of your co-principals. And today we have a group of teachers and administrators who are here to talk a little bit about what our Red Learning Day looks like, how we plan to meet the needs of our students, and how we think about synchronous and asynchronous learning in the big picture. We also want to provide you some ideas about how you can best support your child within the Red Learning as well. So we're going to just kind of have a free flow of conversation, and we're going to address several questions that have been posed to us by parents throughout this summer. So first, I'd like everybody on the call to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Weston Lucas. I'm the associate principal.
Hi, I'm Denise Thomas. I teach sixth grade language arts and social studies and creative writing.
Hi, I'm Whitney Swope. I teach 7th and 8th grade leadership and then 8th grade language arts.
And I'm Tanya Van Orden. I teach 7th and 8th grade science.
Hi, I'm Lisa Johnson. I teach 7th grade social studies and 7th and 8th grade social justice.
So I just want to say thank you to each of you for being here and talking through this in a way that hopefully parents can better understand what we're doing on our end to meet the needs of our kids and to provide them just an awesome, engaging, enjoyable experience, even though it is online in the fall. So the first question that I would love for you guys to think about is, what are we most excited about as we move into this 2021 year and this Red Learning model? What excites you or energizes you about what's coming?
I can start. I'm always most excited to meet a new group of students and just see the skills that they have and what they're going to contribute to our community. And I just get excited about that every single year. Another thing I'm excited about for this year is just to innovate. This is such an opportunity to innovate and try new things and learn and grow. And I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like.
I'm jumping in next because Whitney just said exactly what I was going to say. That always the best part of this job, regardless of what it looks like, is getting to know the kids. That's why we do this, is because we care about your kids, our kids. And what's been really exciting for me, even just from the spring with regard to teaching online, is realizing how many untapped opportunities we have and thinking about what we can keep even when we move back to an in-person model. So in the spring, I had an expert from across the country Zoom in to several of my social justice classes. And it honestly would not have occurred to me to have her come in electronically had we been in the classroom, but that's very possible. And we can do that again when we are back in person. And just pieces like that I'm realizing as we go, that there are all these additional tools that will help us serve our kids really, really well. And since we didn't have to use them before, we didn't really realize how valuable they are. And now we're learning that. And I have just found also communication with parents to be so much more valuable and honest and thoughtful than ever before in the spring, because we're all relying on each other so much more. And I hope that that level of communication and partnership stays with us this year and ongoing as well.
I would second all of that. And when Lisa said untapped opportunities, what I really found in the spring that I'm excited about is the much greater list of ways and opportunities students have to communicate with me. There's definitely always those very outgoing students who are quick to check in with me and quick to ask questions, which is fantastic. Continue to love that. But this sort of platform, Zoom combined with Schoology, really just expanded the ways quieter students could reach out, and students who had really sort of sat in the corner doing their work, doing fine, in this sort of setting, all of a sudden had all these other tiers and other ways to interject, because they didn't have to wait for a chance for all the noisy people to stop talking. They actually had a way that they could get their voice into the conversation.
I'm going to echo everything everyone said, but I'm going to add on that it's always exciting to see sixth graders enter middle school. It's such an exciting time in their lives, and it's so energizing as a teacher, just to see their enthusiasm and just being ready for this new chapter in their lives. So that's really exciting. And I'm actually looking forward to utilizing some of the things that Tanya just talked about in getting to know students in a deeper level than oftentimes we don't really have an opportunity when they're coming and going in 50 minutes and they're coming in and sitting down and you're quickly turning into a lesson very quickly, where we might have the opportunity to chat with kids in smaller groups, or we might have a chance to just even speak with them individually. So I think utilizing all the things that this remote learning platform gives us, as opposed to seeing things that we can't do, really focusing on the things that we can do that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do seamlessly if we were in the classroom, just in person.
I'm really excited about all of the things that have been said here, and I reflect on the word innovate that came up earlier, and just I'm so excited about the opportunity to see both our teachers, who are amazing at innovation and creating new ways, but also our kids who are coming in and they're so ready to learn. You know, one of the benefits that we had in the spring was that we knew the kids who were in front of us that were in our class, and there's going to be a challenge in that there are new students who are joining us in the fall. But I know that our teachers and our staff and the kids are so skilled at building relationships and being able to implement all of the professional learning that's happening and have all of our teachers get to know new kids. So I'm really excited about that opportunity to innovate and how we build relationships and connect with our students. And I know we're going to do an amazing job.
Can I be excited again for a second?
Of course.
I'm also really excited by how this platform, as much as it limits us in some ways getting to know kids, it really expands the opportunities in other ways, because when they're at home, you know, we can, a sibling might pass by and wave, and you know, the dog joins them, or they've just done this cool art project they can share with us, or, you know, we look behind them and we see a trophy on the wall and we can ask about that. And all these things that would be just theoretical to us in the classroom become very real when we can see them. And, you know, it might seem really minimal, but being able to build that relationship is, first of all, the best part of teaching. And second of all, really, really helpful, even just down to the nitty gritty of instruction. Being able to understand our kids better so we can teach our kids better is really helpful.
Thanks, you guys. That's awesome. It's going to be a great year. It's going to be new and invigorating, and everybody's going to be learning. Kids are going to be learning, staff is going to be learning, and our families are going to be learning how to manage and make this a success for our students. So one of the things, when we were constructing the Red Learning Model, we were really thinking about the day as a whole. So thinking about morning as instructional block time and afternoon as asynchronous learning time, where students are able to have some agency and determine how they are going to access all of the opportunities for learning that teachers are putting out there for the week, and how that integrates back into the instructional blocks. So maybe we start with just thinking a little bit about that morning time and that synchronous learning and what that looks like for students differently maybe than in the spring, and how our teachers are already preparing for what that looks like.
I can start.
So
Oh, sorry.
would
Did you wanna go?
this be a good time to share, like, what an hour a day, what have you? Let's see. So I'm going to share screen, which will take just a second, but just as a way to visually illustrate for our current viewers, and when I have students in front of me, quote unquote, in a Zoom setting. It's always important in instruction to have a visual to go with what we say. So that's what we're looking at here. It's important to have some sort of warm up or some sort of hook, right? It's not like spending the entire time on check-in, but we do want to plan ways to collect feedback from students and have communication reminders. Step 4 is a pretty long one, but what you can see in step 4 is that they're getting feedback on a task that we had done called Gravity Games. And it was something where there was enough involved and they'd all selected different types of materials to use. So I have BO rooms, breakout rooms, not body odor rooms, as a planner for me and for them, right? And it's a question mark, depending on the group, we can flex that. And then of course, remind them that a key will be available and when things are due. So it's coming across verbally, it's coming across visually, and it's important, in my opinion, to still have shared experiences, right? There's lots of stuff we can send kids out to do. There are podcasts and TED Talks and YouTube videos. But what we do with what we call synchronous learning is still have that shared experience. And just once, right, I wouldn't have done this every time. We actually listened to a podcast together. Of course, kids can do that on their own time, but it was a way for me to flex our time. And then we came back towards it and came back together at the end. So it built, right, from hook to communication and feedback in the middle to some new learning together as a shared experience, and then as some sort of final reflection where it's not rote, it's not memorization, it's genuine contribution on the student's part within what we're calling synchronous shared time. So I'll stop sharing that because I also found myself as a learner when I was in staff meetings in the spring, I didn't like it when too much was shared, right? I like things to come back to this setting where you actually see faces on the screen. So that's another thing that we learned. I didn't know about that in April, but throughout the course of the spring, I really was mindful of it as myself as a learner, and then became more mindful as far as how I structured time with other people. Thank you.
I guess when I think about this time, I think about how I structure a class period when we're all together. And there are multiple elements in any given class period. There are times when students are getting new factual information, right? So I teach social studies and social justice. So what happened, who was involved, when did it happen, where did it occur, all of those sorts of pieces, right? Where you didn't know it and now you're learning it. And that can be, I'm telling you, that can be you're reading something and making meaning from that. It can be you're looking at images. It could be a combination. And there are discussions between students and teacher, whole group. And there's independent work time where you're practicing skills. And so when I think about having this synchronous and asynchronous time, and I'm going to talk about both because I can't separate them easily in my head to talk about them because they do go so neatly together, is I'm taking one of those class periods and I'm just sorting it. So if you're getting the information from me, then our class time is going to be partially, set up like Tanya was telling you with the hook and feedback and so on, but there's going to be perhaps a direct instruction component where I say, look at this information, listen to these ideas, step back and talk to each other, all of those pieces. And then in the afternoon, when they're not directly with me, is when they could be practicing the skills, right? They're writing a paragraph, they're finding places on a map, they're making meaning of what we talked about earlier in that day. And they can come in and check in, of course, absolutely, and ask questions, but they don't need me there talking with them to make that happen. So the synchronous piece is that which we really couldn't separate out. We can't separate out because it is so important that we're together. So I'm giving information or they're talking with each other and we're having these discussions and we're building on each other's ideas because that's an incredible part of learning together, right? Is not just what I can offer, but what students can offer each other and how we put all those pieces together and build on them. But then the pieces that we can do independently to prepare for that synchronous piece, those are sort of sorted out and put in the afternoon where students can work independently, check in, work independently, check in. And I think it's really going to maximize how well we spend our time. That we're going to be very intentional about what goes where and how we teach different pieces of information. And I'm honestly really excited about that. I think the synchronous piece and the asynchronous piece are going to be really beautiful balances to each other.
I can jump in and talk about asynchronous because Lisa kind of led to that. So thinking about that afternoon portion, the way that I've been framing this in my mind is once we've had this instruction and these common experiences and learning together, we have this afternoon time where a lot of student choice is going to be able to be implemented, application, students can make meaning. And I'm excited about opportunities. Maybe together we read Rules of the Game by Amy Tan. And then in the afternoon, that story was about the girl's hobby of playing chess. And now it's about, okay, what is your hobby? And use this skill to tell me about your hobby and find an article about it so you can bring it back to class because we're talking about our hobbies and our identities. Like a piece where a kid feels like, this is how this relates to me. Maybe I have a couple of choices in how I engage. It might be like, you can choose the podcast route or you can choose the Nearpod. But giving students choice and ways that they can make something meaningful so that they have something that is really relevant to them that they can bring back to the next conversation.
Yeah, kind of adding on to that, Winnie, I feel by the end of the spring, I think our team, we had become pretty good at creating all these different kinds of activities for kids, but we were missing that piece, like Lisa was talking about, is coming back together in this like common group of like making meaning out of what you're learning. Or if I chose a podcast and someone else chose a YouTube video, like how can we compare those things? So I feel like what we were doing in the spring by the end was great, but it's going to be so much more meaningful for kids. And that those times that we are together have meaning for them. So they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be interested in what we're doing. They'll be prepared and ready to talk. So I think combining what we finally really got going great in the spring and adding on this piece, this collective piece together this fall will just make learning just so much more broad for them and also more meaningful and truly more enjoyable for me as an instructor to be able to understand and hear what they're getting from what we're giving them.
Well, and Denise, you kind of moved us to a later question, but maybe we continue with that concept right now. Like, what other things do we see happening differently in the fall because of what we learned in the spring? And each of you has mentioned a little bit already, but maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on the lessons learned and how we see that being an improvement for our students' experience in the fall.
I think personally for me, the big thing that I really wanted to do a lot of learning about this summer and thinking about and talking about with all my other colleagues is just how to use that time online if we're using Zoom as our platform. Like, how do we use that time best? And every age group is different. I can tell you that sixth graders didn't really want to talk. And maybe seventh and eighth graders were at a different place. And so I feel that we are just so much more prepared. We know now like what we need to emphasize at the beginning. We got to practice doing things with like low stakes. I don't know, talk about your pet, or did you get to take a trip this summer, and being able to talk in a breakout room and like, how does that work? And those kinds of things that I don't think we really got to step back because we kind of just dove in to the deep end. And also what Lisa was talking about when you're thinking about instruction in a classroom, I mean, there's this old adage that they really can only pay attention for the number of years that they are old for that many minutes. So if you're talking about an 11 or 12-year-old, you know, you can't do something on a Zoom call for 30 minutes and think that they're in there with you the whole time. So I mean, you're going to have to be planning, like Tanya was sharing, like all these different elements that go into what a 50-minute Zoom call might look like for a middle schooler.
I'd love to add to Denise that in the spring, at least at first, we were a bit in emergency mode of like, okay, what is next week? What is tomorrow? And how can I grab one little piece? Personally, I've never taught online before. I've taught 10 years, and this was my first chance online, and I was learning it. We were building the plane as we were flying it, and my team got to 1 week out, 1 week out, and I'm really proud of those weeks, and I'm really proud of how we learned and we grew. But I think now the summer has given us a time to breathe and reflect on our practice. And then every IMS teacher I've talked with has been in trainings and reading books, and we're all thinking much more big picture, because when we're online, we can't just grab our lesson plans from 5 years ago. It looks different. And so we're doing a lot of new creating and instruction that is different. The skills are the same as us as skilled teachers, that's the same, but the format is so incredibly different. So I'm just gonna share really quickly something I've been working on this summer in collaboration with my team, and this is full year at a glance, big picture. And I changed it to be chunked by trimester instead of smaller units. And all of this is in response to making sure that I have a really clear plan for the trimester. And I've made the text flexible. So I'm a language arts teacher. Depending on if we go from red to yellow, maybe the text isn't, we get to 2 texts, or students can choose to do an additional one. There's some flexibility there, but we are thinking big picture, long-term, and then we're really diving into unit 1. So we're working right now on 13 weeks at a time. What are our overarching skill goals? What are the essential questions we want them to answer? And that's going to really pay off for our team and also our students, that we're thinking the long-term like that for them.
And Whitney, when you're thinking long-term and skills, you're thinking a year's worth of learning, right? Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because I know that some of the concern from our parents is that 3 hours a day, and again, we're explaining how the whole day is considered learning, but I'd like just a little bit more about how we're really thinking about a year's worth of learning. It's not half a year's worth of learning or a third of the year's worth of learning.
Yeah, so my team's working to develop our essential standards, and those are the skills that we want to ensure every kid has met by the time, and many of them will exceed by the time they leave my 8th grade classroom and go to 9th grade English. And those are something that build throughout the year, and they start here, and we're kind of building them in. We're starting on this side, but we're thinking about what skills do we introduce when and emphasize, and then how do we assess those? And all of those are building blocks. We're going to start with the ones that are the foundational skills, and then we're going to get more advanced, and students we have extension standards as well of, if you've mastered these, we're going to send you to the next level. And so then you might be jumping down here to word choice because you've mastered concrete details, commentary, and topic sentence. You know, we're thinking that big picture, and that all will build to the end of the year. So everything is getting more complex, and then just thinking about the big umbrella concepts that we want to make sure you understand, and then the skills, of course, within that.
And I just want to jump in and point out, because I love this. At the top of the screen, we can see that the last edit was made 4 hours ago by Taylor Gall.
Yeah.
So, who is a wonderful teacher as well, right? So previously, my system over the summer was to take July to sort of recharge, and then like dive in August. And there has been no resting, but there has been recharging, because we're all doing this, right? Whitney Swope is working on this. Taylor Gall is working with her. The 7th grade social studies teams, language arts and social studies teams have this document specific to language arts and social studies in 7th grade. And so when we started online teaching in the spring, we didn't know what we didn't know. And now we know so much more and are so much more prepared to address the challenges we saw, and work together as a team to build on those strengths too.
Yeah, to just circle back. So the question has been, you know, how will this be better? What improvements have we made? Are we going to make? I mean, honestly, as simple as having a cleaner schedule and having more time with kids. You know, I had the same number of times, but I have more time set aside to work, like I was saying earlier, that shared experience, as well as more clearly delineated for them, for the students, where their work time is. Because, you know, we had a lot of success with that in the spring too, with some kids choosing to work way ahead and some kids doing a lot of stuff last minute. You know, it's good and it's bad that everything has a timestamp on it now. I can see how long they spend on quizzes. I can see some things in at 11:58 because Schoology sets the default at 11:59 p.m. But that's okay. That's all part of getting to know kids too. And man, did their sleep schedules become clear. I mean, we know it. I've raised children and, you know, the American Pediatric Society, but yeah, it's just like, it's all information and it's all fun to get to know each other. And then they see me post stuff on Schoology, like, what were you doing up at 6:15 a.m.? And, you know. So it's all good. It's all more structure and just continued relationship building and carrying through that thread, a full day, a full year worth of progress and growth.
Okay, I feel like we've kind of already addressed this question. I don't know if there's any more that needs to be added, so I'm just going to put it out there to see if you guys think there does. Some of the concern, and I really feel like we've addressed it, but has been 3 hours of synchronous isn't enough. Is there more, do you think, that we need to say about why 3 hours as opposed to 6, as was in a typical brick and mortar, or do you feel like that's been addressed?
I feel like maybe it's sort of a restructuring of our minds, right? Like everything's been flipped on its head. Our whole society has been flipped on its head. And so this is, and we have to think of it in a different way. And so no, you're not going to be with us for 6 hours. But what we're asking you to do in the time that you're not with us is just as rich or maybe even more impactful for them. Because like Whitney was saying, they're going to have choice and we'll be able to be really thoughtful about what we can provide for them. So although we will not be in front of them, I feel like what they will be participating in and engaging in is just as good or even better as if they were sitting in a classroom or sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours. And quite honestly, I don't know that for a child to sit without moving for 6 hours is what we really want middle school kids to be doing. And like Tanya was saying, there are some kids that are going to need a break after 3 hours of sitting with us, and then they'll come back to it. And then there's other kids that are just going to charge right through and get done. And so there was this piece of like elasticity of time that happened in the spring so that kids and families can be choosing when it is that's best for them and their bodies to be engaging in what's being asked for them. And so I feel so strongly that I do believe that this model is the best for kids just all around, but also for their learning as well.
And adding to that, I want to point out that, you know, when we send our kids, I have 2 kids living with me, and when we send them to school for 6 hours, it's not that they walk in the door, sit down, stare at the teacher talks for 6 hours, and then they go home. Right? That would be terrible. We would all hate that. But what's happening is they're coming in and they're milling around in the morning, and then they come into class and they spend a little time. Wait, where's my pencil? My pencil, I thought I had, do you have my pencil? Oh, here's my pencil. And, you know, we get started and the teacher talks for a while, and the students talk and discuss for a while, and then they work independently for a while, and so on. And there are the built-in passing periods. There's lunch. There's the group work time, the independent work time, the teacher instruction time. And so I truly believe that there is not lost instructional time. There is reallocated learning time. And it is the same amount of learning time. It's just structured differently. And it's amazing that we can take advantage of this flexible medium to help us create a schedule that's going to work best for our kids.
Wow, great. Thank you, guys. So really the last question is, you know, what insights or advice maybe can we provide for our families so that they can best support their child being the most successful in our Red Learning model while their child is at home potentially with them or alone, which is a possibility. So what advice might we give families about how to help kids be successful?
I think a person's learning environment is really important. I know for me, I have a spot in my house and I clear everything off and I really consider my learning environment. And I'm going to coach my students through that work as well. What's around you? If they were sitting in my class in IMS, they wouldn't be allowed to have their phone out and be texting. Not because I hate cell phones, but because I know that their attention is then on their phone and it's not on what's going on in their learning. And so thinking about how can students set themselves up for success, and whether that means they put their headphones in and they close the door and that's their signal. Maybe they need to put a sign up on the door. But if you, as much as you can help them talk that through, and maybe you're walking past and you see that they have started texting, we might not see it with 30 kids. And so just anytime you might be able to be like, hey, let's refocus, that would help us a ton, I think, because we're going to be working really hard to engage kids. But we're so used to having them in front of us. And so we're still learning how to do that and how to make sure that their attention is focused. And then any coaching that you can do on just their motivation and why they want to make sure this year is not a throwaway year. We're not just trying to do as little as possible, but we really want to learn. And so I know the teachers will all be talking about the value of learning and why this learning matters. And I think anytime those conversations can continue at home or around the dinner table, that is only going to strengthen the students' motivation and feeling like this has a purpose and we're here for a reason and this learning matters, even if it doesn't look like it usually looks like.
And I would add, please remember we're on your kid's side. We want your kid to learn, we want your kid to be happy, and we want to work with you to make that happen. So we are an email away, and really, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like I can speak for everybody that we want your valuable feedback. We want to know if your child is struggling with something so we can help them. We want to know what's working really well, so that we can build on that and do more of that for your kid. We are doing this because we want your child to be successful, and we know you want your child to be successful. And when I say successful, I don't just mean A's. I mean having a positive learning experience and taking good care of their social and emotional health and physical health at the same time. And however we can support that balance, we want to. So know that you have information that we don't have, and we probably have some information that you don't have. And between all of us, we can form a really good team, and we want to be part of that team.
I would rely on advice that I give on curriculum night. Anyways, just practice open-ended questions, not do you have any homework, yes or no, but what do you need to be doing today? Did you learn anything today? Yes or no? No. The answer will be no. What did you learn in science today? Or what did you do? Or, what did you do on your own time? Or what are you still planning on doing after dinner? Not, is there anything you need to do after dinner, right? It's these nuances, and we all fall into that trap. But just those open-ended questions, and helping with calendar and setting things up at the beginning of the week. Personally, I would say for 7th grade science, 8th grade science, that if the kid needs help with the material or the learning, no, we're not asking you to jump in and know the material yourself and read alongside them and teach them. No, we're talking about support and communication and encouragement. If the learning gets too tough, then I've picked the wrong thing. Then it's not appropriate for the class or for the range of students. So yeah, we're asking for partnership always, communication always, but you're not expected to turn into your kid's teacher. We are still here to teach them.
That feels, Tanya, like a good opportunity to jump into and reflect that throughout the entirety of the day, whether it's that synchronous time, the asynchronous time in the afternoon, there will be adult help available to kids. And so I think that's also a good reminder. And then also everybody speaking sort of to the organization and study pieces, we know that we're there to support kids as they learn those life skills as well. And we're going to teach to some of those things and help kids develop those skills of determining what are the assignments and tasks that I need to work on right now? How do I prioritize? and we're going to help them with that. So there's help all along the way and throughout the entirety of their learning day and experience. So I appreciate all that reflection.
Well, and along those lines, another
Go ahead.
another piece of feedback we really heard from our families was consistency in communication, consistency in how assignments and weekly plans are rolled out. And so that's something that we've been working on. We've had a staff subgroup who has developed a template that we're going to be educating our staff around. And so parents and kids can utilize that and count on that in a consistent way so that they're not having 6 different ways in which to go about finding what are the tasks that I should be working on during my asynchronous time, or what was I supposed to do during my synchronous, or be prepared for tomorrow's synchronous instructional block. So that is work that we are doing behind the scenes as well, and we'll be communicating that out to our families and our kids once we all understand and know what that looks like too.
Well, I just was going to add, I live with 2 teenage boys, and I always fall into this trap of like, you should be able to do this. You should be able to calendarize yourself. You should be able to know that you're supposed to be on a Zoom call. And, you know, you get caught up in that as a parent so easily. And I felt like there were times where I stepped back and thought, what was I doing when I was in 6th and 7th grade? And I certainly wasn't keeping a calendar and knowing when to be on a video conference call, and then knowing everything I was supposed to do in the afternoon, and then keep myself on that schedule. So this is a huge challenge for them. And I know it's a lot to ask of families to try and be doing their own work at home and trying to keep these kids on track when they look like they should be able to do it. So just keeping that in mind and being kind to yourself as a parent, taking a step back if you need it, and maybe just like a daily check-in. Maybe that's in the morning, maybe that's in the afternoon or the evening, of just, do you think you're on track today? Because falling behind becomes very overwhelming. And so if you fall behind, then you sort of get defeated, and then it just kind of snowballs. And so maybe just finding one time in your day, one parent that can just check in and just see how it's going. And like Tanya was asking, open-ended questions that aren't just a yes or a no. And there was like one thing that came super in handy for us at home was a printer. I know that sounds funny and weird maybe, but there are some kids that just like to print stuff, and it's obviously not a requirement, but it became a really great tool for us at home to be able to print something and see it and post it on the wall. So if you have one in your closet that hasn't been used in a long time because no one needs a printer anymore, maybe dust it off and plug it in, because we found at home that that was super helpful.
Well, you guys, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to allow for any closing comments, anything that was in your heart or your head that we didn't directly ask you that you want to share with our families before we close.
Well, like I said before we started recording, I'm going to be the biggest cheerleader about remote learning. And my students are never going to hear me talk about, oh, I wish we were at school, because we are in school. And so I'm going to just be the most positive person on the planet Earth. And I think that kids feed off of that. So if you are worried and frustrated and all those things, I think your kids pick up on it. So I'm going to try my very best in class to just be positive and just keep moving forward. And hopefully that the kids will start to feel like maybe it's not normal, but this is what we're doing, and I'm going to get on board too.
And I think, you know, I notice this a lot in my social justice class, is a lot of ideas that are really difficult for adults are very embraceable by kids. And I think we sometimes forget that they get up every morning expecting to learn something new. And expecting to struggle with something, and then expecting to do it better, because that is what their whole lives have been. They have not yet gotten to the point where they can be like, I know this. And they'll tell you that they do, but they don't really think they do. They're at the deeper level, they expect to learn. They expect to make mistakes. They expect to do better. And if we approach this with that expectation for them, I think we're going to see great things. I think it's going to be a great opportunity.
Well, thank you, you guys. Thank you so much. And families, thanks for tuning in and listening to us. And this is just one of many communication opportunities that we will be having with you. So make sure to check back to that communication plan and look at all the links and click any video that you want to watch. And we look forward to a wonderful school year together and being in touch often. So have a wonderful rest of your day.